Tonight, a bombshell revelation.
To undermine a president is really a very dangerous thing.
The president's former UN ambassador is accusing the former Secretary of State and former Chief of Staff of an effort to resist Trump.
And ahead of the first public hearings in the impeachment inquiry,
it's impossible to bring this case forward.
Republicans demand unmasking the whistleblower in that Ukraine phone call.
Plus, the president salutes all veterans as thousands gather in New York for the Veterans Day Parade.
And
we are the last service to have its own national museum.
That's all about to change as the Army prepares to roll out the red carpet.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Allegations of deep state within the Trump administration. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm Eric Phillips, in for John Jessup tonight. There's talk of mutiny in the West Wing.
Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is pointing her finger at two men. She says former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and former Chief of Staff John Kelly tried to get her to join them in resisting the president.
CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the details. Ben, good evening.
Well, good evening, Eric and Jenna. It's important to know that these two former big names were pushed out by the commander-in-chief. Haley adds it was a, quote, dangerous path they wanted her to follow.
To undermine a president is really a very dangerous thing.
And Haley says those behind that thing were former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Chief of Staff John Kelly. In her new memoir, she writes, they tried to enlist her to resist President Trump in order to save the country.
It absolutely happened. And instead of saying that to me, they should have been saying that to the president, not asking me to join them on their sidebar plan. It should have been, go tell the president what your differences are and quit if you don't like what he's doing.
Today we come together as one nation.
As President Trump celebrated Veterans Day in New York, his press secretary sat down with Fox and Friends to respond to the allegations.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't obviously in that room. She talks about that story. But I would say one thing that she just said in that clip, which is undermining a president is dangerous, and it does go against the Constitution, and it does go against the American people.
Haley says Tillerson and Kelly told her they weren't being insubordinate, but claimed it was their decisions, not the president's, that were in the best interests of the country.
It goes against the Constitution, and it goes against what the American people want. And it was offensive.
Kelly responded, saying what Haley terms resistance, he called a process to help the president make an informed decision.
It's the same fight we've been having for years.
Haley's book release comes as Democrats take their impeachment hearing public, a move she thinks won't succeed.
No, on what? You're going to impeach a president for asking for a favor that didn't happen and giving money and it wasn't withheld? I don't know what you would impeach him on.
CBN News has an interview with Haley later this week, so watch for that on Friday. As for President Trump, he also plans to host Turkey's President Erdogan at the White House on the same day as the public hearing. So to say this will be a busy week is a bit of an understatement. Eric, Jenna?
Yeah, understatement, no doubt. All right, thank you, Ben. Well, to Capitol Hill, where the impeachment investigation goes public this week. The first two witnesses are expected to testify Wednesday before the House Intelligence Committee.
CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us now from the Hill. And Abigail, what should we expect now that this process goes before the cameras?
Well, Eric, the inquiry is certainly hitting a critical juncture Wednesday, as both sides are hoping that these public testimonies help prove what they've been arguing from the behind closed doors hearings for weeks.
This is a very strong case of bribery.
But Republicans maintain otherwise.
We now know that the aid was held up, but it was also released without any conditions attached to it.
First up to testify is former Ukraine diplomat William Taylor, who told investigators behind closed doors that he thought it was crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. While House Democrats have other public testimony planned, Republicans made a splash with their own requests, hoping to call Joe Biden's son, Hunter, and the anonymous whistleblower.
If they don't call the whistleblower in the House, this thing is dead on arrival in the Senate.
Others, like retiring Republican Will Hurd, want the whistleblower's identity protected.
How we treat this whistleblower will impact whistleblowers in the future. Having this whistleblower law on the books is important. It's an important checks and balance, not only in the Intelligence Committee, but our government.
But adds there is someone else he'd like to hear from.
What I would like to see happen is for Adam Schiff, Chairman Schiff, Chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, to answer questions about what was his engagement with the whistleblower before the information, the whistleblower's allegations were transmitted to Congress.
Now, unless the whistleblower chooses to come forward, it is unlikely that House Republicans will be able to force them to testify, with Chairman Schiff, saying that doing so would only put their personal safety in grave danger. Back to you, Eric and Jenna.
Abigail Robertson on Capitol Hill, thank you very much. Our political panel joins us now to break down all of this. Daniel Lippman is with a reporter covering the White House for Politico, and David Brody, as always, our CBN chief political analyst. Always good to have both of you.
Thank you.
Daniel, beginning with you, how consequential do you think these public hearings are going to be?
This is blockbuster because Democrats feel like they have made the case for impeachment with those private depositions that have leaked to the media, but here they feel like they can actually, finish the task at hand and get the American people to recognize that, in their point of view, that this is what Trump did for this quid pro quo was very damaging to American foreign policy and was against our Constitution. And so people are going to remember these hearings like they did the Watergate hearings decades from now.
David, what do you think? Do you think these hearings can change public perception?
I think both sides are dug in here pretty much. I mean, I think you're going to see an uptick in support for impeachment after these hearings. I mean, when it's on all of the cable networks and all of the national networks, and Price is Right is gone, as you know. I don't like when Price is Right is preempted. That's my barometer. No, that's a problem for me. So I think you're going to see the uptick. I think part of the problem for Democrats here, this is a bit hard to follow. There is a bit of telephone here. This person told this person. I heard it from that person. They're going to be able to somehow make that 20 to 30 second coalesce around a 20 to 30 second argument that makes sense without getting into too many Ukrainian names. I think that'll be difficult.
And now Republicans, they're making a lot of noise about not being able to call the witnesses they want to call. David, how consequential is that?
Well, right. I mean, we talk about due process, and then, well, wait a minute, hold on. But you can't call the whistleblower, and you can't call, for John Bolton, for example, for the House Democrats said, forget about John Bolton, pretty important guy. Bolton would even testify if a judge will allow him to. But House Democrats say, we're good with the lawsuit. Forget about that, because time is money, so to speak. We got to keep this moving. I mean, that kind of, you wonder about due process on that.
Yeah, political hot potato going on here for sure. Yeah. Let's talk about Nikki Haley and her claims that both Tillerson and Kelly asked her to oppose the president. How do you think that's going to plan out?
Well, Nikki Haley is concerned about her political future, and so she is being very smart politically and strategically, where she criticizes the president a little bit in the book, but she still got that presidential endorsement tweet of her book, which I'm sure drove some book sales. But she is saying that she was trying to get recruited, or that Kelly and Tillerson tried to recruit her to be part of the resistance in the Trump administration, which during this next week is the publishing of Anonymous, that book, A Warning. And so that is, very interesting to watch because she wants to keep her credibility, but she also wants to stay loyal to that Trump base.
Can I just say real quick, I just think Daniel's onto something here, because she's going to run in 2024. Let's not make any doubt.
No matter what.
You're sure of that?
Oh, 100%, 150% for sure. And look, what she did here, I think, was masterful. She was able to say, look, Trump base, I'm with you on the deep state stuff. 2024 plant for now. And oh, by the way, if John Kelly and Rex Tillerson are going to come to anybody, they're going to come to me, the voice of reason within the Republican Party. I mean, she was able to thread that needle to perfection. It was quite a piece of work.
Well, let's not forget how critical she was of the president on Syria too. I mean, she was pretty outspoken with that.
Although Kelly, he had a pretty good retort to the Washington Post, saying if providing the president with good advice and trying to huddle amongst each other to figure out a game plan for the world and for U.S. policy on global issues, if that is some type of crime, guilty as charged, he said. And so, he knows how to kind of sling it back.
Well, ahead of 2020, today we learned another GOP representative will not seek re-election, Representative Peter King from New York. Daniel, how worried are Republicans at this point?
Republicans feel like there is pretty much no path to getting the House back in next year because many Democratic voters who had stayed home in 2016 because they weren't thrilled about Hillary Clinton, they're going to come out in droves next year, and Trump is going to be worried about his own political future. He's not really going to care about the House of Representatives and flipping that, because especially it'll be the second term, and so whatever policy achievements you have made in your first term, in the second term you're kind of a lame duck, and so he cares less about the House of Representatives, and the party has just shifted to become much more Trumpist and nationalist, and Peter King is a moderate who was praised by Chuck Schumer today.
All right, David and Daniel, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Refugees, welcome once again. Up next, the Trump administration lets up on its one-month ban.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Refugees are once again welcome in the United States. After halting all entries during the month of October, the Trump administration is now allowing some refugees in. The pause in the admissions led to hundreds of canceled flights, thrusting thousands of potential refugees into uncertainty. The Trump administration is capping the number of resettled refugees in 2020 to 18,000, the smallest number since the refugee program began. And Scott Arbiter is the president of World Relief, a global Christian humanitarian organization working to overcome violence, poverty, and injustice throughout the world. And Scott joins us now. Scott, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be with you, Jenna.
So your organization, it works to resettle refugees. What did you make of the administration's October halt?
Well, we saw it as really unfortunate at a variety of levels. Just to go back for a moment, we've had a great history as a nation of resettling some of the most traumatized people in the world, the refugee population. It's had bipartisan support for nearly 40 years in Republican and Democratic administrations. And in a time where we have 66 million displaced people, the most refugees in recorded history, for us to close our door completely for any period of time is just really tragic for those people. We had people who were had tickets in hand and were ready to fly here, approved by the State Department. They went through their security vettings, and they were then unable to come.
Yeah, well, along those lines, has the U.S. ever imposed this type of block before that you know of?
Not in the last 30 years that we're aware of. There was a very significant slowdown just after 9/11, and I think everybody would look at that and say that was a wise thing to do. But President Bush very quickly reinstated that work within just a month or two. And so the difficulty here is not only did we close it down completely for a month, but then we saw the president make a decision to reduce the number of refugees that would be admitted in the coming year to the lowest number on record. And that reduces refugees of all types. And in particular, it is also impacting the persecuted Christian population.
What kind of effect did all of this have around the world, and was world relief directly affected?
Well, we're affected because at a personal level, we work through 1,200 churches around the U.S. to provide a welcoming presence in each of the communities for the refugees that the State Department has approved to come over. So we had to turn to our church partners and say, that compassion that you want to express in the name of Jesus, that's not available to you because there's no one to come. Most importantly, though, we've come to know these refugee families over the years. We've resettled nearly 300,000 since the program began. We know the dignity of their lives. We know the trauma they've been through, and we know what it is for them to have come over to the U.S., but then to find that their family members who were supposed to come join them are now locked into places where it's dangerous and the likelihood of getting here has been diminished. So that's very difficult for us to observe. And it also decreases the number of people that we can serve in our mission, the very thing we're called to.
Now, there's a lot of fear out there right now about refugees posing a danger to American national security. Is there a way to resettle refugees while keeping America safe and at the same time showing compassion to these refugees?
That's a great question, Eric, and the answer is yes. I think what most Americans might not realize, because it's complicated, and there's an awful lot of information out there, but a simple fact might help. Since the program started, the United States, through the State Department, with all the vetting and security that they very appropriately put in place, we've admitted 3 million refugees into this country. And there's not a single American life that has been lost to a terror incident sponsored by a refugee. So 3 million refugees and not a single American life lost. That would tell me we have a very good safety record. And
well, Scott, we have to...
security matters, compassion matters. We don't have to pick between the two of them. We can accomplish both.
Scott, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Coming up, a new survey lays out the physical and mental well-being of our soldiers in their own words.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
On this Veterans Day, we want to talk about the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of those who have served our country.
That's right. The Wounded Warrior Project just got back information from a massive survey of veterans, and some of the results are disturbing.
My vehicle was struck by a improvised explosive device.
Ryan Cools recounts an explosion after his tank platoon had finished a 2005 raid in Iraq.
That device took my right arm and left leg, and then also the two soldiers that were with me in the truck died in the blast.
Cools and other military heroes are surveyed each year by the Wounded Warrior Project, a service organization focused on troops since 9/11.
The survey went out to over 109,000 individuals, and we heard back from just under 36,000, which is a 36% response, or excuse me, a 33% response rate. For any data geeks out there, that's an incredible response rate.
And the fact that we get the response rate that we do shows that our Wounded Warriors really care about this topic and being heard.
And the Warriors had a lot to say given these current findings. According to the results, 70% were exposed to toxic chemicals during their service, yet only 9% have sought treatment.
Now, that doesn't mean that all of those 70% are experiencing health implications right now. However, it does potentially foreshadow some of the challenges that might be on the horizon or emerging.
44% of female warriors said they've experienced sexual trauma.
That's up 12% over the last 5 years.
Experts say part of the increase might be women feel more comfortable about coming forward. And perhaps most disturbing of all, 33% of those surveyed report thoughts of suicide or self-harm within the last 2 weeks.
That's a staggering number relative to the population when you look at individuals that are suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or depression. But again, it really brings home the challenges related to mental health.
Something to which Ryan can certainly relate.
About a year after my initial injury is really when kind of the mental aspect hit, knowing that for the rest of my life I was going to be missing 2 limbs, and 2 of my guys that weren't coming home, and their families would never see them again.
But he did get help through the VA and Wounded Warriors. The husband and father of 3 now runs a mental health program for the project. He admits, however, the past continues to haunt him.
It's certainly something that I deal with today, but I have some skills and understanding on how to deal with it.
Now, there is some positive feedback from the survey. The results indicate more home ownership and more veterans obtaining 4-year degrees. We'll be right back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
President Trump is the first sitting U.S. president to kick off the New York City Veterans Day parade.
You are the reason our hearts swell with pride, our foes tremble with fear, and our nation thrives in freedom.
Since the armistice that ended the fight on land, sea, and air during World War I between the Allies and Germany in 1918, Americans have celebrated Veterans Day to honor the Marines, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and the Army. And as the nation remembers the soldiers who fought in every division of the armed forces, today, one branch, the U.S. Army, has never had its own national museum.
In 2020, that's set to change. The future capstone of the Army is still under construction on a hill in Fort Belvoir. But Gabe LaMonica gave us a preview of it.
When it opens, the steel fortress behind me is going to be the Army's first national museum. It's been a long time coming, but the Army took us inside for a sneak peek. The big reveal of the U.S. Army emblem on the lobby floor comes some 2 years after installing the final steel beam, and some 200 years after the 13th U.S. Congress authorized a national museum for the Army.
We are the last service to have its own national museum.
It took a lot of heavy lifting to move in everything from this Cobra King battle tank, the first in Bastogne 38-ton legend that broke the German lines during World War II's Battle of the Bulge, to this M3 Bradley fighting vehicle that led the charge in the 2003 invasion of Baghdad. All before suspending this Vietnam-era UH-1 Huey from the ceiling and bringing in hundreds of artifacts in between. Now, the oldest branch of the U.S. military is rolling along and into a 185,000 square foot glass and steel citadel above 84 acres some 20 miles south of the nation's capital.
It represents a beacon, again, the strength of the Army, the safety of the Army, and that's how we protect our citizens as well.
Tammy Call is the museum director.
We tell the Army's story, the comprehensive story, through the eyes and voices of our individual soldiers.
One of those voices belonging to the late Melvin Nestaby, who survived the Bataan Death March during World War II.
I will always be a soldier.
Hundreds of American soldiers died when the Japanese Army beat and tortured prisoners of war during a forced march of more than 60 miles.
A well of water springing up into everlasting life.
Nestaby's New Testament Pocket Bible is just one of over 7.4 million copies issued to American GIs during World War II.
Lack of water or starving, this helped them through that time.
And this good book carried Nestaby past the perils of murder and disease over the course of 4 POW camps in 3.5 years.
He carried that with him throughout the duration of the war.
Paul Mirando is the chief of exhibits.
He gave his life, his service to the United States Army, and his story, along with this Bible, needs to be told.
The museum will cover the history of the Army from the Revolutionary War to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Army says that after over 240 years, this testament to its service and its soldiers is long overdue. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Yeah, long overdue indeed. Well, that is going to do it for Faith Nation this Veterans Day.
We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great one.